So I asked a question on Instagram, on the Instagram stories, how you can put a little question there. And it was asking people to name one thing that they think is holding the graffiti culture back. Got a lot of good responses. Actually, ego or things related to ego was definitely the top answer. But Cub and I had covered that in a previous episode. So go ahead and take a look if you want to listen to that. But one question that I did like was, one answer that I liked was the lack of leadership, and that answer came from Tame. Actually, known Tame for a good amount of time. He's been coming to the shop for a while. You can see him at _Tame. It looks like _ after that. He's a good dude. He's got a lot of good work on his page, so check him out. Shout out to Tame for the answer. So leadership is actually something that I've been studying pretty heavily lately. I'm scaling my business and building the team and all this kind of stuff. So I've read some books on leadership and listened to podcasts on it, listened to audiobooks. So I wanted to just share some of the information that I've come across, some ideas that I have on how it could be applied to the graffiti culture. And one thing I want to say off the bat is even if you aren't actually leading a crew or leading a business or any of that kind of stuff, if you don't see yourself as a leader, I want to start off by saying that we all lead in some way or another. So that's what I wanted to kick off this talk. I wanted to say conversation, but I don't know. It seems weird. It's just me talking, but I guess it's a conversation with you guys. So I wanted to kick that off with just starting by how everybody can lead. If you think about it, no matter where you stand in the graph culture, even if you're just starting or if you're just a little ways in, maybe you've been writing a year or 6 months, or you're just starting to write, it's pretty likely that there's somebody that's I don't want to say below you, but like somebody that maybe is less experienced than you, or maybe you're a little older, or, whatever the case may be. It's pretty likely that somebody's looking at you. And so whether you believe it or not, you are leading in a way. So let's kick it off with that idea. So I wrote down some bullet points, and one of them is lead by example. So, one thing you can ask yourself is, are you the kind of writer that you want to see in the culture? So to me, that's number one. If you want, there's all kinds of quotes and shit, like be the change you want to see in the world and all that kind of stuff. Are we being the kind of writers that we want to see in the culture? So if we really do think that, there are some issues in the culture, I think the first place we need to look is at ourselves. Are we carrying ourselves in a way that we would want to see other writers, carrying themselves? So that's number one. And some examples of things that you can do, or things that you can look at, is like, one of the main things is like, are you taking care of the yard? Like when you go to a yard, are you trashing the place? Are you throwing beer bottles around? Are you catching tags outside of the yard? Leaving all your trash everywhere? Are you leaving signs of where you came in and out? All these kind of things. These are the kind of issues that we face as writers and as a culture that can make it so that we don't have spots to paint anymore. So I think, to start is like, are you taking care of your spots that you paint and things like that? Are you passing down information to the younger generation? That's another thing that comes up a lot. A lot of older writers will talk shit about the younger generation, how they have no respect and they don't understand the rules and all that stuff. But like, are we passing that information down? Are you passing that information down? So I think we can all look at ourselves and see, are we doing that? Are we helping pass down the knowledge that we have that could help, continue things moving forward? So from there, you may not lead a crew, or you may not lead a business or any of that kind of stuff, but, you may have a big name in the graffiti culture, whether you're up a lot or whether you have a large following on social media, whether you run a shop or a nonprofit or a gallery or something like that that's within the culture. Even if you don't have a team, it's very likely that people are watching you. So if you're carrying yourself in a way that in a humble way and all these kind of things, this can help lead the culture in the right direction. So we should all be looking at ourselves, whether you have 500 followers or 500,000 followers, like there's people following you, and this is, more social media type thing. But these people are following you for a reason. They want to hear what you have to say, or at the very least see what you're doing. So by carrying yourself in a way that maybe is a little more respectful and a little more growth minded, I guess, or I don't know, just carrying yourself. I think you get it already by what I was talking about in the beginning, but that's an example to carry yourself in a way that you can treat it like as if you're leading people, because people are watching you. So a couple of books that I read about leadership, one of them is called Extreme Ownership, and the other one is called The Dichotomy of Leadership. These books were written by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. They're former Navy SEALs, and they ended up starting a company called Echelon Front, and they actually train companies to, fix their leadership issues. They probably do other stuff like that, but that's mainly what they talked about in the books. So what I really like about these books is that they talk about the leadership in their military operations, and they describe them in pretty good detail to paint a picture of what they're dealing with from a leadership standpoint and the problems. And then they take those stories and then they apply them to business. So you can really see how there's a crossover on how those things can apply to business. And what's cool about it is if you think about, leadership in a military environment, they're talking about shit that they were dealing with in Ramadi, where they were like straight up fighting insurgents and all this shit. The stakes couldn't be higher from any standpoint, but from a leadership standpoint, they're sending these troops out that they have pretty much, well, not pretty much, they're family now. So they have to send their family out essentially into these life or death situations. So it doesn't get any more serious than that in terms of leadership. So I'll go over some things that I learned from that book and some things that I'm applying to my business. And then also to the Cuts crew is like a graffiti crew that I run with JR33, and we do community service type stuff and things like that. Check out @Cuts crew if you want to see more about that. So we're applying a lot of these things that I'm gonna talk about to our crew, and these are also things that I'm applying to my business. So one thing I like about the dichotomy of leadership is they listed out the laws of combat, and I'm finding that these apply directly to business really well. So my understanding is there's 4 laws. One is cover and move, and that's another way of talking about teamwork. And one example that they give in the book is, you have a person or a team cover certain people or another team as they move, and then you cover them as they move. And it's just basically you're working together to get whatever objective done. So it's a good way to look at your team and make sure you're covering each other while they're doing things. And it's kind of hard to come up with specific examples for graph, but I think if you really think about it, you can come up with some. Another law is simple, and basically just keeping things simple. They talk about in the military, they use really clear and concise communications without a bunch of extra words and not repeating themselves. And then that way everybody is on the same page, and there's not like it's not overly wordy, so that it keeps things simple and clean. They also talk about keeping plans simple. The more you overcomplicate a plan, the harder it is for everybody to be on the same page as to what's going on. So I've been trying to implement that into my business and streamlining processes. And we're going to start implementing that into the Cuts crew and getting everything streamlined and simple in order to make sure everybody knows what's going on. I think as people, we sort of have a tendency to overcomplicate things. So I really like this particular rule. This third one I really like. It's called prioritize and execute. And, it's just about finding the top priority item, getting it done, moving on to the next one, and then getting it done and moving on. And I know I do this, and I know a lot of people do this. When when you're sort of faced with like a huge amount of stuff to do. And as any business owner knows, there's always just tons of shit to do. So prioritize and execute is an awesome way to get that stuff done and just chip away at it. So in my business, we run stickers, and we were getting in this point where we have 4 machines and they're all doing their thing. And then there was this kind of bottleneck happening where the stickers come off of the machines and then we have to process them. And so since we weren't implementing the prioritize and execute, what we were doing is just trying to like get a shitload of stuff printed, and then they get cut. And then all these sheets would just be stacked up all over the studio. And it was very overwhelming for the people that were running the stickers. And then for the next shift, the next day, they'd come in and there's just like sheets of stickers all over the place. So what we ended up doing is implementing this prioritize and execute, and just say, get the oldest job and run it start to finish. That way we weren't like piling up all this stuff, and we were just letting the machines run as much as they could, but we weren't piling up stuff on that bottleneck end where we were processing them at the very end of the job. I'm probably overcomplicating this, so breaking one of the rules of combat, overcomplicating this explanation. But anyway, it was just what ended up happening was, by not trying to attack the whole list at once, our setup is capable of doing 4 jobs at a time. So that's essentially what we were doing, and not trying to get the whole list done. We were just going from the oldest job and getting it done. We actually found that we're moving much, much faster now by doing that. So I'm trying to pay extra attention to that idea of prioritize and execute, because I think it could be implemented in everything. And so if you think about, if you're doing a big job with your crew, a big mural or something like that, and you just put everybody on the wall and everybody's just doing their thing, a lot of times, if you're doing like a collaborative piece, it can end up taking a lot longer than it needs to, because you don't really prioritize and execute. So if you were to say, what's the first thing we got to do, and we get that done, and then we move on to the next thing, rather than everybody just out there doing their thing, there's a lot of ways that this can really help speed things up. I haven't implemented the prioritize and execute into those kind of projects as much as I have in my business. So I don't really have like a lot of working examples of that. So the last one, another one I really like, and what I'm trying to implement into both my businesses and Cuts Crew, is decentralized command. And one of the things they talk about in the book is that you can really only effectively lead 6 to 10 people. Then you start to have, like, as a leader, if you want to effectively lead the whole team, like let's say you have 40 people, it's going to be very difficult for one person to lead all 40 people. So you start getting subordinate leaders or junior leaders to lead specific groups of people. And then that way you have a chain of command. So like certain group, like say 6 to 10 people are reporting to one person, then that one person reports to their leader. So you have this chain of command. It sounds kind of like you're complicating things, but at the same time, it's actually simplifying things so that one person doesn't have to manage 40 people. You have, say, 4 junior leaders running 10 people apiece, and then those 4 junior leaders report to you, and you can focus on the big picture. One of the things they talked about in the books was, as a leader in the military, in a military operation, they were talking about when you sort of need to clear a building or something like that, the leader, the people in the front, or the people that are actually, busting in and doing all that stuff, you're just looking straight down the barrel of your gun. So your view is a little limited when you're doing that. And so they said you have the leaders in the middle, or whatever position that they need to be in order to see what's going on in the front and what's going on in the back, or whatever is the best position for them to be. And they said a lot of times they'll have their gun at high port, which my understanding is like, it just means they're holding their gun up in the air, and they're able to see the whole picture, the whole scene of everything going on. So if the leader is looking down the barrel of his gun or her gun, along with the rest of her team, then she's only seeing that same limited view. So the leader really needs to be able to see the whole big picture. And so when I think about that for my business or for the Cuts Crew, I see my role is I need to be able to see that big picture stuff more so than be with that narrow focus. So some team members have their specific roles, so it's good for them to have that sharp focus on that one task. And then the leader has a more wide view, and they're making sure everything is coming together and everybody's heading in the same direction. So it's something that you can definitely implement into a crew, any kind of crew that has a lot of members, or not even a lot of members. If your crew has 20 members and you're leading all of those people, it's possible that there's a lot of loose ends happening because it's kind of difficult for one person to lead that many people. So if you had junior leaders that were managing, 4 or 5 different people, and then those junior leaders are reporting to you, it'll be a lot easier for you to keep track of the whole vision. So the other thing that has come up in both of those books is that, and actually in a lot of different things in podcasts that I've listened to, is that they say that there's no bad teams, there's only bad leaders. And as hard as that is to get my head around, I'm starting to really get it. Whenever a problem comes up, and I've been guilty of this too in my business, like if somebody on my team fucks up, it's pretty natural to just think like, oh, that person fucked up. Why did they fuck up? But in this book, when they talk about the idea, or both of these books, when they talk about the idea of extreme ownership, it's pretty interesting to say, what did I do to cause this problem as the leader? So if I'm the leader of this company and one of my team members fucks up, instead of saying like, why did he fuck up? Why is he not getting it? And that's the easy way to go for I think most people, for me, for sure. But nowadays, when I'm really starting to grasp this concept, I'm trying, I'm going to emphasize the word trying, because my brain still goes to what the fuck? Why did they do that? Or why did this happen? But I need to go back into, how did I not either deliver the information in a way that they understand what they're supposed to do? How did I not deliver the information in a way that they understand that it's important? Did I not make it clear why they're doing what they're doing? There's a lot of reasons why that shit could have happened, and it really should come back to the leader. So when you do that, you take extreme ownership of a situation, then a lot of really good things happen, because every time I do that and something happens in my company and my mind goes to, why the fuck aren't they getting it, or whatever it is. I know my guys listen to this podcast. I love you guys, but we've been down this path of different shit that happens. And a lot of times I'll focus on that. Why did this happen? And be focusing on, why did they do this thing? But the more healthy thing is to go, what did I do wrong? How did I not do my job as a leader? And I'm finding that when I do that, the solutions are clearer. So I'm not going to say specifically what happened, but the last thing that happened that I had to correct my teammates, rather than getting pissed off, I was kind of pissed, but rather than focusing 100% on why did they not do the thing that they were supposed to do, instead of doing that, I just looked at what was my part. And when I did that, I found the solution. It was like, okay, well, I need to make like a checklist, because everybody forgets things and things happen, and a clear, concise checklist, an explanation as to why this needs to happen and how important it is that this checklist gets checked off every day. That solved the problem. And in addition to that, it's also something that I can check up on and say, hey, I noticed this happened. When you check off this stuff on the checklist, just double check that this is in place, and things of that nature. I won't get too far into it, but the point is, when I stopped looking at why they didn't do this thing that I needed them to do, and looked at what did I do to cause this to happen, the solution revealed itself. So there's going to be times where you could do that, and then the person, I have not experienced this with my current team members, but I have experienced this in the past, where when you do that, there's just going to be people that are not a good fit. And then that comes back to you. You got to own that and realize that person isn't the right fit, and then let them go, or whatever the case is, give them more training or or however you feel like you need to handle it, but it's on you to own it and do what's right, what's best for the team. Another thing that I've come across in several different places that I thought was really cool is that a good leader takes responsibility for the bad that happens. So if something goes wrong, or if sales are down, or if the crew isn't functioning the way that you think it's supposed to be functioning, you take responsibility for that. But then when good things happen, you give credit to the team. So I would say it's a bad leadership move that if, let's say you're in a company, your sales are up like 300% and you go to your team. Imagine you go to your team and you're like, hey, we're up 300% because I did this and I implemented this and that. Imagine what those people are going to think when they're like, well, what about us? We're all here working hard, and this guy's standing up there just because he's the leader. He's taking credit for all that. Think about if you stood in front of your team and were like, hey, our sales are up 300%. And it's because of all the hard work you're doing, and you're calling out specific people, and you're like, hey, the work that you're doing in this department and the work you're doing in that department, and you did this and she did that. And you're giving your team all the credit for this growth and not even mentioning yourself. You're creating a much better culture among your team, whether it's a crew or whatever the case may be. A lot of leaders tend to think like, well, I'm the leader and I did this. And I've dealt with leaders like this before, where it's a lot of, I did this and this is my thing. And all this kind of stuff, like that really sucks the life out of shit. And people don't really want to follow you. Why would they want to follow you if they're doing all this work and you're taking all the credit? But if you're standing in front of people and giving them all the credit and not taking any credit for yourself, you're going to create people that are very loyal to you. So I feel like I do that. I hope I do a good job at that. And that's something that I want to always make sure that I'm keeping an eye on, because ego is something that we all have. Like, it's not a matter of not having an ego. It's just a matter of like not letting it run the show, as Cub said in the ego episode. Ego drives you to do things and accomplish things and push yourself and all this kind of stuff. But it's like learning how to keep that shit in check and not letting it be on the forefront, and keep humility on the forefront. So I personally really try to do that. It's one of the top things, as far as like personal development and things that I want to hang on to, is humility as a leader. I mean, I think that's possibly the most important thing. I mean, I can't really say with 100% certainty, but I do believe that humility is possibly the number one thing that you need to make sure you're hanging on to if you really want people to want to have your back and want to follow you and trust you and do all this kind of stuff. If you're going up there with an ego and you're all fucking arrogant and talking about I and me and this is mine and all this kind of shit, it's going to be very hard to create a loyal team with that kind of attitude. So that's about all I wrote down for this topic. If you want to get in on any of these questions, I'm going to try to do that a little more frequently. Go follow us at Machine Studio on Instagram. If you like the show, please subscribe, rate, and review, all that shit. Share. Really helps. Appreciate all of you that have been doing that. So since this is episode 30, I feel like this is a cool milestone, and I really wish Cub was here for this. But, that's obviously beyond any of our control. But I thought it might be cool to cut in this one clip. And this is the very first time we ever recorded. So we didn't really even talk about anything specific, and it doesn't relate to leadership, but it's, I just thought it was a cool thing just to share with everybody. What we were doing when we would record together is we would start the mics and just kind of start talking about stuff. I don't know, just get warmed up. Anyway, I thought it would be cool for you to hear. So here it is.
Yeah, that's clean.
When you get like really close, you can hear like all the spit in your mouth and shit. Shit's really fucking gross, man.
It reminds me of like a Saturday Night Live clip with Molly Shannon, where they're doing this like podcast with one of the Baldwin brothers.
Oh yeah, the sweaty balls.
Yeah. Fucking classic. Shit's so good. But what an amazing moment to, like origin of the birth of this, with all these other things kind of taking a seat. And so it is.
Yeah. So I'm not even thinking about doing an intro or anything. I think we should just, I don't know. What do you think? Like,
you know, I think it'll come to us. I think we had some pretty clever ideas that I think artistically could add value to the frame of what we're doing. I don't think it's necessary right off the jump. I think it'll kind of massage itself into it as we ride.
No need to worry about all that stuff.
Nah, not at all. Yeah, stay up. It's a beautiful day.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Peace.
Appreciate it.